Welcome to tonight's Vicki and Carl Zeiger Insight Seminar for What We Talk About When We Talk About Anne Frank by Nathan Englander, and our amazing guest for tonight's show, director of the show, Erna Fincy-Viterbi, artistic director of the Old Globe, Barry Edelstein. Yay! We're so glad you can join us tonight. And so, it's nice that it's cooled off. It's not. Last week was a lot hotter, I heard. So I hope. Thank you for being here. As usual, I'm Justin Waldman. I am the associate artistic director here at the Old Globe. As usually, what I'm going to do is embarrass Barry by telling about the amazing things that he has done in his career, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the play. Sound good? All right. So Barry, as I said, is the Erna Fincy-Viterbi artistic director at the Old Globe, which is a Latin phrase that means my boss. What we talk about when we talk about Anne Frank marks the second collaboration with Nathan Englander that Barry has directed, which he did The 27th Man several years ago, which was fantastic. He's directed on all 4 of the Globe's stages, and I include the Globe for All tour of the community in that. He's done 5 Shakespeare productions here at the Old Globe. Wow. Musicals like Life After, plays like Picasso at the Le Panegile, and the world premiere of Anna Ziegler's The Wanderers, which he won the Craig Noll Award for Best New Play, and he'll be seen in New York this winter at the Roundabout Theater Company. So you get to see it again if you like that, which is a fantastic show.
Come to New York.
In addition to running this amazing institution, which you see all around us, he oversees the Globe's Classical Directing Fellowship Program, and he recently directed The Tempest at the LA Philharmonic with a orchestra of 80 pieces, which is an amazing thing.
Wow.
Before we took him away from New York City, he was the director of the Shakespeare Initiative at the Public Theater in New York City, and he was the artistic director of Classic Stage Company in Lower East Side of Manhattan. He is also a writer. In his book, Thinking Shakespeare, which is just released a new edition, is the standard text on American Shakespeare acting. So if you ever want to learn how to act Shakespeare, just read the book. It's pretty simple. He wrote Bardisms, which is Shakespeare for all occasions. I did look at that when I was planning my wedding vows. So I do recommend that. I actually used it. It works well.
Yeah.
He is a graduate of Tufts University, as am I.
As is he.
Go Jumbos.
Right.
And Oxford University, which I did not attend. And he was also a Rhodes Scholar. Is that a thing?
That is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I didn't learn about that at Tufts University. He is also a amazing father and husband to the amazing Tilly Rose and Augie,
yes.
and just it's so special to be able to have him here with us tonight. So welcome, Barry.
Thank you,
Edelstein.
Justin. Thanks, everybody. How nice. Okay, so I'm going to exercise a little bit of executive privilege before we start our program, and I'm going to say some nice things about Justin. So I wonder if anybody here is from New Jersey. Anybody here from New Jersey? Okay, well, there you go. Danielle is from New Jersey. So there's a wonderful town on the Jersey Shore about 45 minutes south of New York City called Red Bank, New Jersey. It's in sort of horse country near where Springsteen lives, just north of Asbury Park, really wonderful part of New Jersey. And one of the special things about it is one of the country's great regional theaters is located there. It's called Two River Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey, extraordinary place. And to the Globe's chagrin, but to my private joy, they have poached Justin Waldman to become their next artistic director. So Justin will be leaving the Globe after 12 extraordinary years here, and after hosting this series for a couple of years, and this is the last of the Insight seminars that Justin will host. We're incredibly proud of him. It's a great thing for Justin and his beautiful family, Tara and Ben, and it's a wonderful thing for the American theater. It's a really important theater company, mid-sized theater that does really wonderful work, and he's going to do extraordinary things there, and all of us at the Globe are so proud of you, Justin, and wish you nothing but great things.
Thanks, sir. Thank you very much. I don't know. Okay, can we just stop now? We'll just take I need a little break. Thank you, Barry. I really appreciate it.
Most
it's
welcome.
Just been a privilege of my life to be able to work here at the Old Globe. So
We'll miss you.
thank you. All right, now I have to host a
Yeah,
thing.
you're
Okay,
fine.
so You've had a very long relationship with Nathan Englander.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and why is there such an artistic bond between the two of you?
Yeah, that's a wonderful. It's one of the highlights of my career. So Nathan Englander, for those of you who don't know, is really a novelist and fiction writer, highly distinguished, won a whole ton of awards, Pulitzer Prize finalist for one of his novels, and one of the great short story writers that we have in American letters. He is a guy in his, I don't know, what is sort of early 50s, roughly my age, a little younger. And he is in the generation of American Jewish writers who are kind of the children of Philip Roth. So, people like Michael Chabon, Jonathan Safran Foer, Nathan, writing in a kind of post-Roth fiction about American Jewish life as a way of understanding American life. So he wrote a very famous collection of short stories called For the Relief of Unbearable Urges, and the most famous story in it, and most celebrated story in it, was called The 27th Man. Short story, a true story, imagined by Nathan about the last days in the lives of a handful of writers who were writing in Yiddish in the Soviet Union and were murdered by Stalin. Terrible story, and a not terribly well-known story in the endless annals of anti-Semitic persecution. But this small group of guys who had a flourishing Yiddish language culture in the Soviet Union were ruthlessly exterminated by Stalin in one of his purges. So Nora Ephron, the great journalist and producer and director and writer, optioned to that short story because she saw a play in it, and she grabbed Nathan and said, I want you to write this as a play. And he did. And Nora was on the board of the Public Theater at the time in New York, the famous theater company in Lower Manhattan. She brought it to Oscar Eustis. The artistic director said, I think you should look at this. At the time, I was at the Public, before I came here to San Diego, running the Shakespeare operation there. And I had said to Oscar, my boss, I would love to get out of the Shakespeare world for a little while and do something a little more contemporary. And he knew, of course, of my deep interest in Jewish issues and Jewish themes. And he said, well, guess what? We're working on this Nathan Englander play based on one of his stories. I was like, Nathan Englander? You got to be kidding me. I was a reader and a fan. Do I get to meet Nathan Englander? I like fanboyed out. And so Oscar hooked us up, and we immediately bonded and began a 2-year collaboration with Nora and the Public Theater to bring The 27th Man on stage. That happened in New York in November 2012, right when I was appointed artistic director here. In fact, we were in rehearsal when the New York Times story ran that I was appointed here, and I remember having a coffee with Nathan saying, tomorrow there's going to be a thing in the New York Times that I want you to know about. My son was born. It was an extremely auspicious moment in my life. New job, new city, new child, great play, extraordinary relationship with this great writer. It was a very successful production in New York, many accolades, on many top 10 lists for best production of the year in 2012. Really special, really powerful experience. So when I came to the Old Globe, Justin's mentor, Nicky Martin, one of our associate artists at the Globe, famous artistic director in his own right, the advice that he gave me when I got this job was, he said, do your hits. So I said, okay. When I came to the Globe, I raided my closet of plays that I had done well in my previous career, and one of them was The 27th Man. So we brought it here, and Nathan came to San Diego, and we did that. Well, it would have been, 2015, Justin, I think?
I think it was
2014. Yeah, and that was, Hal Linden and Ron Orbach, all these amazing actors. We did it in the Cheryl and Harvey White Theater. So at the time I'm almost done. At the time the 27th Man was running in New York, Nathan was suddenly hot as a playwright. So Lincoln Center Theater commissioned him to adapt another of his short stories. By that time, Nora Ephron had passed away. She alas never got to see the production at the Public. She passed away just before it went on, but we dedicated it to her memory. And so Lincoln Center commissioned this adaptation of what we talk about when we talk about Anne Frank. And I had nothing to do with Lincoln Center Theater. It just sort of had a life of its own. They never really figured it out. They had a couple of years to work it out. They never really figured it out. So a couple of years ago, and Nathan and I have stayed friends, and the Globe has commissioned another play from him, and we talked about Anne Frank, what was going on with it, and Nathan said, yeah, nothing's really going on with it at Lincoln Center. So I called the head of Lincoln Center Theater, Andre Bishop, and I said, are you doing anything with Nathan's play? He said, I don't think we are. I said, I'd want it. He said, okay, you can have it. You can have it with my blessing. And that started a process of me and Nathan working on that play, which is now almost 6, 7 years long, of just occasional conversations, occasional rewrites. I mean, he's written 2 novels and another collection of short stories in that period of time, so he's been busy.
Prolific.
Yeah, he had another kid and his family moved to Canada. I mean, I've been here working away, we're busy. But eventually we got it going. We and have had a date planned, which was like April 2020.
Yes,
and
it was.
I have a draft of the play that Nathan sent me dated March 11th, 2020, which with an email saying, okay, here it's ready for rehearsal. And the next morning the world shut down. So I'm incredibly grateful to the Old Globe, and I am obviously deeply part of this process, but I want to absent myself from it. The Old Globe kept the faith with this play in a changing world and a changed world, and said, no, we should do it. So when the lights turned back on again, we rescheduled it, and now, all these years later, here we are.
Here we are. And, so can you tell us a little bit about what the show is about? So what is it that we're talking about when we're talking about Anne Frank?
Okay, so there's a couple of things about it. Obviously, there's a very famous Raymond Carver short story, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, one of Raymond Carver's most famous stories. And it's a very simple story of two married couples who haven't seen each other in a while. They get together for dinner, they start to drink, and long suppressed secrets start to come out. And it's really a story about marriage. So Nathan's kind of riffing on the Carver title and the basic structure of it, which is two couples having dinner, booze starts to flow, marijuana gets smoked, and crazy stuff happens. That's kind of basically it. It's in a familiar genre in the American theater of dinner party gone wrong, You think about God of Carnage, you think about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, right? We call it Who's Afraid of Laser Wolf, right? That's it's a Jewish Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. The short story ends. So now what does Anne Frank have to do with it? Well, Nathan, the abiding theme in Nathan's work is Jewish culture and American Jewish identity. And Nathan and his sister, who was here the other night at our dress rehearsal Sunday night, when they were growing up, had a crazy game that they used to play, and it sounds kind of weird to describe it. But they had this game, private family game, which is, if there were another Holocaust in America, would that person there hide us the way that somebody in Amsterdam hid Anne Frank? And it was their way of deciding whether somebody that they met was trustworthy. They'd meet somebody new. I wonder if they'd hide us. And this dark, weird, twisted, sort of jokey, comic thing about, of all things, the Holocaust. So that game gets played during the course of this dinner party that's in our play. Would that person hide us? And that's the story, really. It's incredibly simple. Now, the setup is two women that went to high school together in a religious religious school in suburban New York City. They were both religious Jews. One became secular, married a secular Jewish guy, moved to Florida, had a kid. The other got deeply religious, moved to Israel, married a Hasidic Jew, and has 10 kids and is living in Jerusalem. The women haven't seen each other in 20 years. And on the night of our play, they're together again for the first time in 20 years. So the other thing that you get is a secular Jewish American couple and a religious couple, Americans who now live in Israel and are deeply religious. So the other thing that's going on in the play is secular life versus religious life, questions of spirituality, big discussions about the Holocaust and how we educate our children about the Holocaust and the right way to think about the tragedies of Jewish history and how they're passed down. And along the way, we get into big questions about uncertainty in American life because, of course, the metaphor of a secular couple and a religious couple having trouble communicating is our world right now. We live in a divided world, and if you voted for Hillary and if you voted for Trump, it's hard to talk. And that's really what the play is about. In a world that is as radically divided as ours, how can we reach out and learn how to talk to each other? And that's what we talk about when we talk about Anne Frank, and that's how the play works.
Excellent. Yeah. There's, I don't really have to do much
Press
So,
go.
but
But
here
the
you go.
coffee is
All right.
key, man.
Yeah.
Because without the
What's
coffee
it-
at this time of day,
What else is
I'd
in
be
there?
like, That's just coffee.
Can I have some? So, as you said, this is an adaptation of his short story, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what does it take to move a story from the written word of written fiction to live theater?
Yeah, it's amazing. Watching Nathan figure out how to write a play after all the time that he spent alone writing fiction has been one of the great joys, and he's brilliant and so fast and so instant with it. Obviously, writing a play is all about creating drama. You're setting people in conflict with each other, and as each character pursues what he or she wants, they run into obstacles of other characters pursuing what they want, and in that conflict, truth emerges. In fiction, you can go inside somebody's head, and somebody can tell you exactly what they're thinking, and somebody can describe what somebody looks like, and how the particular jaunty angle that the hat was on that guy's head. And here's what I was thinking as I listened to my wife have an argument with her old friend. In drama, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Shakespeare does it when he has a character step down center and unpack to us what he's thinking, right? But, in the last 400 years, that's become a little more difficult to do. So the inner lives of the characters have to emerge through the way that they conflict with each other as they pursue their goals, and that's the arc of dramatic action of the play. Hugely different from fiction. Now, the weird thing about this particular story, as with The 27th Man, heavy with dialogue. Nathan writes very dialogue heavy in his fiction. Hey, have fun tonight. And so he was able to lift passages of dialogue from the short story and stick it in the play. But just dialogue doesn't make a play. There has to be dramatic action, and there has to be an arc of dramatic action that unfolds over the play. And so watching Nathan figure out how to do that, that he doesn't have to say, I'm going to place the white mug on the center of the table, because a person can simply pick up a mug and put it on a table, right? It happens in front of us. We don't need it described to us. And he's been remarkable figuring out how to do that. And he has found, in the case of this play, how do people change over the course of the action? You don't need to do that in a short story. What happens as a result of the experience that people are having in front of us? You don't need to do that in a short story. How do you account for the fact that there's an audience responding in real time? You don't need to do that in a short story. We can, as we're reading a book, we can stop, flip back a few pages, read it again, put it down, have dinner, pick it up again, right? Here, it all has to unfold in one straight line over 90 minutes. So it's been amazing watching him figure out how to do this.
And you had an extra long gestation period, which you talked about
Yeah.
how we paused when the world paused,
Right.
and then came back to it. What changed in the show during the pandemic? Like, and how did the themes that this is exploring become even more relevant?
Well, so really great question. And when we came back to life and we knew that we would be producing the thing in 2022, we said, should the pandemic be in the play? Should it be in 2022 right now? And we made a decision, no, that we should leave the play in 2019, because the play is trying to figure out, right? So, okay, all right, imagine it would have been produced in 2020, right? So Trump is president, the country is having the fights that it's having, and the separation between the two couples, Netanyahu is prime minister of Israel, right? A very specific political environment that would have been playing out at the time. And the characters in the play, and in particular the heroine of the play centers on the secular woman in a way that the story does not. She's really trying to figure out how to just live in this insane time. And she has premonitions about what's going to happen in America. And in the context of 2019, they were very abstract and very vague. From the point of view of 2022, we know what's going to happen in March of 2020. So by putting the play in 2019 and having this woman think about what's about to go down in America, but from our point of view, knowing how horrible it's about to get, we bring a totally different perspective to it than the characters are able to access in 2019. And that's the big thing that happened over the pandemic, right? Is that what seemed hot and alive in a certain way in 2019, now we have even crazier perspective on what's been going on in our country, and for the characters to be in a moment where we know what's coming next, but they don't, creates this sense of, oh my God, that sort of suffuses every moment of the show. I'm really glad that Nathan made that choice, because we talked about it, well, why not? Why not put the pandemic in it? But he was steadfast and said, no, it's much richer if we know something that the characters don't. And I think that was a brilliant move on his part.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really great. And you talked a little bit about the dinner party goes wrong kind of thing, and the idea that these people who outwardly seem like they would have so much in common, they start from a similar background. They're both. They're all the same age. They're all Jewish, but like the semantic differences between them drive this wedge that cannot be broached. And it's really fun to watch the different. What's it called? The how they find alliances with each other in the different pairings of the different ways that that foursome can couple together and find common ground with someone that they just were at their teeth with.
Right.
Like, how does that shifting alliances work in putting the show together?
I think it's one of the great fun things about watching the show, because you listen to these arguments that they're having about whatever subject. They talk about the Holocaust, they talk about intermarriage, they talk about Israel, they talk about kosher food, they talk about all sorts of things, and you listen and you go, yeah, good point. That's a really good point. And then 2 seconds later, oh, I hate you for making that point, right? And then you listen to that guy and you think, that's a really good argument. Oh, yeah, but you're being a little bit of a jerk now. And so it's this wonderful sort of, it's in some ways, it reminds me a lot of Shaw, because it's beautifully composed sentences, characters who speak in paragraphs and make extremely complex arguments that ping off of each other, and you hear it sort of banging around the theater in this wonderful way, and you keep going, yeah, I'm with him. Oh, no, I'm not with him anymore. Oh, I'm with her. Oh, no, that's a terrible thing to say. And it's just this rich, fantastic ride that you go on as you watch the terrain shift underneath these characters.
And we've talked so much about all these different hot button issues, these things that are really heady, really esoteric, really thought provoking. But the play is one of the funniest things I've seen in years.
Yeah.
It is fall out of your seat.
It's
funny.
true. Yeah.
And how?
Well, Jews are funny. So that's
Okay, good
that's
answer.
just what it is. Jews are funny. Because, and that's one of the things that's discussed in the play, is that, how many millennia of persecution and tragedy and horror, you got to learn how to make a joke. That's one of the things that's debated in the play. It's like Mel Brooks making a movie about a musical of, the Nazis, right? If you can't figure out how to joke about it, then the weight of it is just absolutely crushing, I have young kids, and they're old enough now where the question is very live in our family of how we teach them about the Holocaust, And you have a young kid, right? And you just go, do I want to crush them by presenting to them the horror that's this radical? Do I want my beautiful young children to know that there was a hatred aimed at their core identity so profound that there was an attempt to liquidate us off the planet of the earth and off the face of the earth? And I think, I don't know that I want my beautiful 10-year-old boy who loves baseball to hear that. And yet, I will be somehow, abdicating my responsibility as a human on this earth if I don't somehow find a way to make him understand what is part of his heritage in that way. And it's super complicated. My daughter had her bat mitzvah at Congregation Bethel in La Jolla. I don't know if any of you know it. It's absolutely one of the most beautiful houses of worship anywhere in the United States. A spectacular, spectacular location, which, since the shooting in Poway, has now been surrounded by a 12-foot-high military-grade fence. And when you show up to worship your God on a Saturday morning, there are two men armed with automatic weapons at their side to make sure you're not going to be killed while you're doing it, right? So the horror of this is so immense, right? How do you find any joy? How do you pray to God in a joyous and open-hearted way when you're thinking, I need guys with guns and security fences so that I don't get murdered, right? That's the question that the play is trying to figure out. And by laughing and finding some kind of celebration of the basic impulses of life, you know, we get fat if we eat too much kosher food, right? We make stupid puns about the Catskills or whatever it may be. That's some way to kind of leaven and brighten the dark experience of Jewish history. And that's what Nathan's writing is all about. If you've read any of Nathan's fiction, he's amazingly gifted in the same way that Philip Roth is at making wildly, howlingly funny jokes out of material that's like so dark. And that's the triumph of the play and of this writer.
Mm-hmm. It is so successful. This group of actors are,
oh my God,
nonpareils with their comic timing.
One of the strongest casts that's been on a dramatic stage at the Globe in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's really special. They're a special group.
Joshua Malina, whom you may know from The West Wing, right? He stars in it. Rebecca Kreskoff, another well-known TV actor. Greg Hildreth, who's been at the Globe many times and is a big Broadway star. Mm-hmm. Sophie von Hasselberg, late out of the Yale School of Drama and blazing a trail through a very, very successful career. Nathan Salstone, young kid, plays the son of the secular couple who's just out of Carnegie Mellon and it's just unbelievable comic skill on that stage, and it's been a joy to hang with them, and we've been laughing our heads off as we've been working. It's been really great.
And so with all this said, what is it that you want the audience to walk out feeling or thinking about, of like how can they take the lessons of this play and apply them to their own lives?
Well, I really think what Nathan's trying to talk about here is, in a world that is as radically divided into black and white, into heads or tails, how are we ever going to reach across and love each other again? That's the question that the play is asking, and I hope that's the thing that the audience, that's the third act, right? The famous thing. Every play has two acts. The third act happens over coffee after the show, right? That's the conversation that the audience is having afterward, which is, yeah, we do live in an exceedingly polarized, scary United States of America at the moment. How on earth are we ever going to talk to each other again? Can we find that love that existed 20 years ago when these girls were in school together and somehow rekindle it and somehow see each other as human beings again, right? There's a line in the play which was at the end of the whole thing, the secular guy who's been berated by the religious guy all night long says, yeah, I kind of like him for a fascist, you know? and finding the human being who's inside our enemy, finding the human heart inside the person whose political views frankly appall you, that's the art. And that's what I think Nathan is trying to ask us to do.
Mm-hmm. And that it really comes through at the end, like that you're trying to find this detente,
right?
You know, cross those, build the bridges that we're trying to build.
Because it's too exhausting otherwise,
yeah.
You know? And that's another big idea that comes up in the play. It's just exhausting to live at this moment. It's exhausting for all of us to live at this moment, where the fighting is nonstop, where the political wrangling is just ceaseless, where institutions are under stress and we're so scared for the future. It's exhausting. So what can we do to just reach out to each other one person at a time, to try and find some kind of love and some kind of connection? That's what the play is trying to talk about.
Yeah. We're running low on time. I'd like to open it up to let you talk a little bit about what we talk about. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Right.
So I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear. The question is about how do you decide what space of the three spaces we have at the Globe to program a play on? And how did what we talked about end up on the Cheryl and Harvey White stage?
Well, there's a big Indian musical on the other stage, so not a lot of room for that. It's a really interesting question, but that is kind of the answer. These big musicals that we do attract a massive audience in a way that a gnarly, talky play about people making jokes about the Holocaust, just isn't, right? 250 seats, that's the right size for a show like this. And that's why it ends up in the Sherilyn Harvey White Theater instead of on the stage of the big theater. Each time we go through the season selection process, we ask ourselves, okay, what's the right place for this? And it's basically our hunch about the size of audience that a show like this is likely to draw. So a big musical, a big spectacle, that belongs on the big stage, and a more challenging, more complex, more rigorous kind of piece maybe lives more comfortably in the Sherilyn Harvey White.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to follow up on what Barry said tonight about how we really enjoyed having Justin on board. It would have been a connection. Yes. So many, I think we all feel that. Those of us that come to the sites, you've just been our connection, and it's been lovely. And I will tell you, especially during the pandemic, we've done a good job. Where's Justin? And he's doing something. Remember,
That was when I was doing the Insight seminars online. I was in our old porch.
Right, I remember that.
Thank you.
Here. Bravo, Justin.
And you got to see the long hair too. So, yeah, you come out of the pandemic, you get sheared. Thank you, Nikki. It's very kind of you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, are
Anybody-
any of you
anybody-
coming to the show tonight? Who's coming to the show tonight? All right.
Oh my God.
Good.
That's a big percentage. That's
Well,
fantastic.
Good. Enjoy our
Well-
first public performance. So
First
that's
preview tonight.
First time any audience is going to see this brand new play.
Well,
Incredibly thrilling.
as Barry said, tonight is the first preview. It is also tomorrow night is the opening of Come Fall in Love on the main stage. And then on Thursday night, Barry is hosting an In Conversation with Nathan Englander. So if you want to hear some more about this amazing play from the horse's mouth, as it were,
Yeah.
That'll be a really exciting day. And then this show
I'm
opens
the horse's
on
other
Sunday.
end. He's the horse's mouth.
Oh my God. But Barry, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Justin.
much for your energy. Thanks for the amazing answers to all these questions.
Sure. Thanks everybody for coming out.
We appreciate you coming to the Vicki and Cargill Zeiger Insight Seminar. Thank you, everybody.